Hi everyone. I don't know if Ferguson is going to want to be in this video or not, but for now, here he is. This is a video to tell you guys about the week that he has had. Unfortunately, he just spent 8 solid days in the hospital for kidney issues, and we truly thought that we were going to lose him. So the fact that he is now home is an absolute miracle. We cannot believe that he's home. I shared a little bit about this journey this week on social media, so I wanted to come on here and do like a longer explanation of what happened this week and kind of share with everyone, because I know so many of you love Ferguson. Share with you what happened and the celebration that he is home, but also kind of share with you that we're definitely not out of the woods yet, but we're encouraged by the progress that he's making. So if you have followed me for a long time, you might remember when Ferguson came here in 2021. He was just a newborn kitten, and it was clear right away that he had medical problems. After a lot of investigation, it was determined that he had kidney disease. And it was really interesting. A lot of people didn't think that a neonatal kitten could have kidney disease, but they definitely can, and he definitely did. He would drink so much water, he wouldn't gain any weight, and basically we took him at that time to a specialist who told us, he is not going to even survive another month. They said, take him home, keep him comfortable, and to, eventually euthanize him. And at the time, that was so devastating to me. I just felt so sad for him because his brother was healthy and able to be adopted and he wasn't. And so I kind of put a little party hat on his head and said, okay, well, we're going to symbolically adopt him so that he can know what it is to have a forever home. And so he was supposed to be kind of like a hospice kitten for us, and worked really hard to keep him alive, tried so many things. And ultimately he made it, another month, and then he made it another 6 months, and then he made it a year, and he made it, now he's almost 4 years old now. And it's been a lot of work to keep him healthy during that time. But, we've had him stable for so long now that I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of took for granted that he is going to be healthy forever. And unfortunately, that is not how kidneys work. A lot of people think of kidney disease as something that senior cats go through, but he was born with it. And so his decline has been a big question mark for us this whole time. With kidney disease, they can be very stable for a while and then slowly decline, or they can be stable and then steeply decline. We just have never known how this was going to go. And so with this incident, what happened is that about a week before this started, Andrew actually said, I feel like Ferguson looks a little bit off. And I looked at Ferguson and I was like, I don't know if I see that, but let me weigh him. I weigh him and all of our cats a couple times throughout the year to just make sure that they are maintaining their status quo, that they're healthy. So I had recent weights for him, and his weight was the same as it was for the last year. So I said, I don't know. I mean, I think he seems fine. His energy seemed okay to me. But I said, I'll just, make a blood work appointment, like a non-emergency appointment for the future. So I had set an appointment that actually was supposed to be this week for blood work for him. And, another day went by and another day went by. And then after close to a week, I noticed that I agreed with Andrew, that he looked off. He was, hanging out in the closet, which is atypical for him. He was looking dehydrated to me. He had lower energy and was kind of staring out the window, looking a little bit sad. And I was like, I think you're right. He does look off. And I put him on the scale, and he had lost the most weight he had ever lost. He's always been a small guy. 2.9 kilograms is like his baseline. He was down to 2.7, which was like, he hasn't been that low since he was a kitten. So that really shook me because I was like, okay, yes, he is having a problem. And Andrew's like clairvoyant. I don't know how he can see these things so early, like even before I could see it. And so that weight loss and seeing the lethargy, I was like, okay, this is not, we can't like wait. We have to get him in now. So we got an urgent appointment with his specialist. Andrew brought him in, and it turned out that his kidney values had climbed like very significantly to the point that he needed to be hospitalized. So we didn't know what would happen with that. We didn't know, sometimes with kidney disease, there can be like an acute infection or an acute injury that, causes kidney values to spike, and then they can, be in the hospital for 24, 48 hours and, turn it around. And that was what we really hoped would be the case for Ferguson, but we didn't know. The big question was like, is this chronic disease progression, or is this, an acute thing that he can fight and get back to, his regular baseline, or get to something of a healthy, stable place, even if it was a little worse than he used to be. So he spent the night at the hospital, and the big hope was that the next day his kidney values would start to come down. One of the big measures for kidneys, if you have never dealt with a kidney cat, basically what you do is you get blood work, and there's all these different values on the blood work, but one of them is called creatinine. And creatinine basically is measuring like essentially how well the kidneys are able to function and do their job. So a normal cat who doesn't have kidney disease, their creatinine would be like 0.6 to 2.4. Ferguson, his baseline is usually around 3.2, 3.3. His creatinine when he was hospitalized was 7.3, which is very high. So we wanted to see that number come down. And after a day in care, we got the next day's blood work, and it had gone all the way up to 8.6. So that was incredibly devastating because it meant that despite what we were doing, he was worsening, which was a sign of chronic disease progression. And if you think of the kidneys, like if you think of it like any other kind of injury, there are injuries you can recover from, and then there are injuries that you can't recover from. If he were to have chronic disease progression to the kidneys where it's worsening and worsening, and it gets to a point where the kidneys literally like do not function anymore, like there's no coming back from that. So that was really, really devastating because it meant he was not healing, and not only was he not healing, but he was seeming to get worse. So tried more things, and then over the next day, his third day in the hospital, we got more blood work in, and his kidney values were the same. They were 8.6. So that led us to believe that we were basically at the end. He was looking terrible. I mean, he looked like he was 22 years old. He looked so, his coat was so rough, and his energy was so low, and he just looked so downtrodden, and he felt terrible. And we were like, okay, his kidneys are shutting down. And so we thought that that was going to be goodbye. And it was hard. I mean, that was really hard. I like started to make arrangements for euthanasia and for a necropsy because we want to, when he does pass, we want to do a necropsy to understand his kidneys, because he does have a really unique set of circumstances with his kidney disease. He's kind of a mystery to a lot of people. I started to kind of make arrangements for my own grieving. You know, I've gone through so much loss in the last year and a half with Eloise and then Coco. The amount of grieving I have done is just, I can't even begin to explain how not ready I am to do this again. But I in that moment was like, okay, I better get ready. I have to be ready. And I know that there are things that I've done that have helped me with the grief with my other cats, making sure that I have paw prints and making sure that I have little keepsakes and that the goodbye goes a certain way. And so I started to plan that, because it was like, this is it. That's it for Ferguson. And it was horrible. But what ended up happening was there was a night where I was talking on the phone with the specialist, and she essentially said, he has this other issue going on, which is called nephrogenic diabetes insipidus. And this is where basically the body just does not retain any hydration at all. All of the IV fluids that they were giving him that should have been able to flush the body and support the kidneys, all of that in his case instead was literally just passing through him. He was just peeing out water, but he retains the electrolytes. So he was retaining sodium. And when you are dehydrated and retaining sodium and those numbers are spiking, that can lead to a lot of other problems that are, arguably an even bigger emergency than the kidneys. It's can result in neurological problems. It's horrible to have the high sodium. So, long story short, basically we didn't know, because usually what you want to do with a cat with a kidney incident like this is get them on supportive care, get them in the hospital, get them on IV fluids, give them all of the various supportive care that cat would need, and see if this cat is hydrated, can their kidneys bounce back? But for him, he was not only not hydrated, he was becoming even more dehydrated and now having this secondary electrolyte issue. So she basically said to me, there's one last thing we could try, but she didn't think it would work, which is to essentially place a central line, which is a jugular catheter. They have to, sedate the cat and put a catheter in their neck so that they can draw blood every 3 hours so that they know exactly the levels in the blood every 3 hours. And then they have a team of criticalists there whose specialty is working with these really, really critical cases. And they actually can do kind of this fancy medical math to create a custom fluid solution for them that is isotonic to them in that 3-hour period. And I didn't know what to say to this because I was balancing all these different factors. If he is, in my mind, I was okay, if he is dying in the next 24 hours, do I want to put him through sedation and placing this catheter just on the off chance that this thing works? But we talked it through at length, and for me, it ultimately ended up being a question of can I live more with trying and it not going my way, or can I live more with the question of if we had tried, would we have had any success? And it was very hard to decide, but I ended up deciding that I would have a harder time living with not trying. So we did it, and they placed a jugular catheter, and they started working with the criticalists to change his fluid protocol. And then the big question was the next day, what is his blood work going to look like? And we all thought it was going to get worse and that would be it. If his blood got worse, then that would be the confirmation we needed that even when given this very custom hydration protocol, that even then his kidneys were just too far gone. So So we waited, and it was so hard to sleep. Andrew too, it's been exhausting to be this kind of on edge, wondering if we're saying goodbye to our cat. And we woke up the next morning, and they called and they said, none of us can believe it, but his kidney values actually started to come down. So after just one day on that protocol, his creatinine came down from 8.6 to 6.3. And I couldn't believe that. I was like, I'm sitting here ready to say goodbye. And now it did not mean that we weren't saying goodbye, but we had like a pathway. It kind of felt like, I don't know, like I picture this like tangled maze, and there's like 7 billion wrong places you could go, and there's one little secret path you could take, and somehow together we were able to like make this decision that got him on the one little correct path that gave us maybe not like a perfect ending, I don't know, but it gave us a thing to do, a way to not have to say goodbye yet. And so that was it. Then it was like, okay, we gotta just keep going. The other thing about his fluid needs, because he needs fluid that is going to help with the nephrogenic diabetes insipidus, they wanted to also have him have a lot more fluid intake that was just free water, meaning just like drinking water. So they ended up placing an NG tube in his nose, which they were able to then get not only meals, but also just like additional fluid that way into him. So he had the NG tube, he had the central line, and they were basically just trying to like very carefully give him hydration that would work for his body. And we did that for, a couple of days, and his values the next day went down to 5.9. So we knew this is working, like we have to just keep going. The day after that, they went all the way down to 4.9, which, I said his baseline is usually like 3.2. From 8.6 to 4.9, that is like, I can't even believe. So yeah, lots of different factors to this. There are other complications. For example, one issue that he's having is that his red blood cell count is quite low. And that is very common when a cat is hospitalized for kidney disease. Basically, there is a hormone called erythropoietin, and that stimulates the red blood cell production. And when your kidneys are compromised, you don't produce that hormone, or you don't produce enough of that hormone. So he needed to be on a synthetic version of that called darbepoetin. And so he got that to try to help with his red blood cell production. But in the meantime, that drug takes about a week to reach its full efficacy. So he is anemic right now, but we're balancing all these factors. Like, do we want to put him through blood transfusion and all of the problems that could occur from that, or do we want to wait and let the darbepoetin kick in? There's all these different factors. With that, we decided not to do the blood transfusion. They recommended against it and said, really, at this point, the best thing for him is to come home. It was like 2 days of trying to taper him off of his fluids to be able to like remove the tube and to be able to remove the central line and have him just try to like drink fluids orally. We don't know if he's going to drink enough fluids. Once we realized that discharge was even a possibility, we made some changes here. If you follow me closely or know Ferguson well, you know that Ferguson loves to drink out of the sink. And I think sometimes people probably assume that we're just like playing that up because it's funny, but I'm not lying when I say that Ferguson drinks like 99.9% of his water out of the sink, not out of a bowl, not out of a fountain. People always ask, why don't you have fountains? Well, we have a lot of fountains in the house, and all of our other animals love them, but Ferguson doesn't like it. He doesn't like still water. He only likes sink water, and we have like 4 different sinks, and he uses all of them, and it's a whole thing. So we were like, okay, let's get him a new faucet on one of them as like a welcome back gift. So we got like a automatic faucet that's like a commercial faucet, the kind you would see like at the airport. You just put your hands under it and the water comes out. So we're hoping that way he'll be able to, get the water on his own, so that he doesn't have to always depend on one of us like being there to turn the water on. We turn the water on like 30 times a day. Like Andrew and I both work from home, so turning on the water is a big part of our day. And he drinks a lot like that. So we, put some novel water sources around. We got some like high water content food. One of the interesting things about his discharge instructions is that they like specifically don't want us feeding him his kidney food, because he usually doesn't like wet food at all. Like he will not eat it. He only eats dry food, but he eats like a renal, like a kidney specific dry food. And he just like won't eat the wet kidney food. So they actually said that it's better for him to just have regular wet food than to have dry renal food, because the hydration is so important for him right now. So he's getting wet food, and then we have to put this like phosphorus binder called aluminum hydroxide into that, because his phosphorus is very high. He has a number of other drugs that he's needing now, an anti-nausea med for the time being, an appetite stimulant for the time being. What else? He is getting some subcutaneous fluids at home, but it's a low dose just to kind of continue tapering him. And giving him a chance to like slowly come down from that and see if his body can level out. He is on an antibiotic again. He was, he's so interesting because he's never been able to like show on lab work that he has had an infection to his kidneys, but he has always responded to antibiotics when he has had like an acute kidney problem. And so this time around, like as soon as he went into the hospital, I said, like, can we just add an antibiotic, because we know that it has helped him in the past. And then at home, we're continuing that antibiotic for a period of time. So he has a lot of care here. We are definitely not out of the woods. He's not himself fully. He is pretty low energy, which I would expect after 8 days in the hospital. And, we know that he's anemic right now. We know that hopefully that will, he'll produce red blood cells. They said a lot of the time they do better at that at home, because they're not as stressed. They're not like getting their blood taken constantly, getting their blood diluted with all of these IV fluids. All of that can have an effect on the blood cells too. So we're hoping that some of that will regenerate and he'll be more kind of like energetic and oxygenated over the coming days, we hope. It's right now so much is up in the air. It's really like hour by hour and day by day, but we're just so grateful to have this chance. I mean, it almost feels like he's like a little ghost or something. Like I thought he was not ever gonna be at home again, and now he's here, and it's amazing that he's back. I feel like we've really threaded a fine needle here, and I want to say thank you to everybody who has supported him. Almost immediately after being hospitalized, our dear friends Megan and Justin came up with a design for a t-shirt, a Ferguson Forever t-shirt, and it's so cute. It has like his little water mohawk and his water droplets on his head. And when we shared that, it's a fundraiser shirt to help with the unbelievable expenses of 8 days of specialty hospitalization. And people have really, really come through for him. And I want to say thank you so much if you supported with a t-shirt. I hope you love the shirt, and I really thank you for helping us feel confident that we could keep going, especially when signs started pointing in a good direction. I was like, okay, well, now we have to keep going. We got to keep going. And we're not done yet. He's home now, but this is very much like outpatient. He's still going to have to go back in a couple of days for more blood work, and we'll be going from there. I hope that he's going to be at least at a manageable level for a little while longer. He's got his 4th birthday coming up. He has a book coming out. My Adventures in Fosterland series, he is, book number 6 is about Ferguson and Shoo Shoo. And it's so cute. It has like illustrations about his, early life. And one of them is even of him like drinking from the faucet in that silly way that he does. And, oh my gosh, he needs to live to see his book. He needs to live to run around the catio and be friends with Shoo Shoo, and to look after the little foster kittens, and to guard our hallway. And, he's always sitting in the hallway with his feet in a row. We always say, feet in a row, good to go. He's like a little good luck charm in our hallway. And he needs to keep doing those things. All of the things that I love so much about him. So that's the update on Ferguson. I hope that this answered some questions about what's going on with him, and I'll be sure to continue sharing more. But thank you for caring about him. I think it's every cat person's wish that everyone loves their cat too. You want to share your cat photos and how much you love your own cat. It's just, you always hope that other people can understand it. And it really means a lot to me that you guys understand that, and you've been here for his whole journey. And I really appreciate all of you, and hopefully there is much more good to come.
Welcome home, Fergie. We're so happy you're here. You did it. And you're doing it. And everyone loves you.